Hey, everybody. I just wanted to go ahead and put this up first before the episode real quick. Subscribe to Patreon, patreon.com/Brennan Tassif. Thank you, everybody that does subscribe. Again, really appreciate it. Just quick producing note. I wanted everyone to know that in this episode, I reference a few time frames. I'm just a little off. When we're talking about me first hearing about Matt, I said like when I started listening to podcasts in 2006, 2007. I discovered Matt in around 2011, so I was just a little off on my dates. I was drunk a lot back then, so sue me. Also, I reference Patrice O'Neill, something that he had said. I said 5 years ago, just don't realize how old I'm getting. It was actually 10 years ago. So don't email me or DM me or tell me how much of an idiot I am. I am very aware. Anyway, enjoy the episode.
Grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. Quick rundown of the show if you are new to the show. I am sober now, but one of my favorite things to do when I was out partying, doing drugs, getting in trouble was to hang out with friends and shoot the shit, share funny stories, and just be an overall great drinking buddy. Again, I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do, so that's what this podcast is all about. I will sometimes do a solo show, but that's just every once in a while. I will mainly be joined by a guest, and today is no exception. I am joined by the Concierge, a.k.a. your baby's father, a.k.a. the Fullcharge, Mr. Matt Fulchiron.
Wow, the intro was quite the walk down memory lane.
Yeah, right? What's going on, man?
You know, the Crab Feast is almost 10 years ago we started that.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years ago,
God.
Which is crazy. The Concierge, I don't go by much, but it's a cool nickname.
Yeah. I remember.
And your baby's father is kind of cool. I don't know. You know, I used to listen to so much hip hop. We just went with the AKAs.
Yeah.
And I was in charge of doing the intro at the Crab Feast. So I would just, that was a fun time because it was before we even knew what podcasts were, what they were. We definitely didn't know what they were going to become.
Yeah.
And we were in a unique situation where we had like a producer and stuff. We had an ex-radio guy.
Yeah.
Who's now a radio guy again, was producing our show. For better or worse, part of for better was we didn't have to think about anything except for the content, which we really weren't sure what to do.
Yeah, and
we pulled it off.
Awesome. Those are awesome episodes because it's one of my favorite things, and it's what this podcast is kind of turning into, is just kind of like comics just hanging out, or friends just hanging out and shooting the shit, and it's like a peek into their world. And I thought that was so cool. And I originally, because for the audience, I followed your career for over a decade now, because I remember originally hearing Tom with Chuck on Jay Moore's podcast, like the second episode. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is like 2006 or 7. I was like, oh, this Tom Segura guy is really funny.
Yeah.
So then I went to your mom's house, and like literally that week was the episode that you were on your mom's house. I think it was back in the Silver Lake days or before that.
No, we lived, I remember Tom came and picked me up because we lived a block away, and we went over to Red Band's house. It was filthy. No offense, Red Band. I'm sure your situation's improved. And I didn't even really know what we were doing. I think that was probably it wasn't the first podcast I ever did. One time I did a podcast in Arizona. I was in Tucson, and this just kept asking me. He kept showing up to the show, and I was like, fine, I'll do it. And I went over, and I just remember in the trash can next to me. I remember they were just like so unprepared and so unorganized. And it was like, dude, this is like my time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? We went over there, and they were just like, it took them a while to get set up. And then I sat down. And there was a used condom in the trash can, like right to my left. And one of them ended up saying the N-word. They were talking about Mel Gibson. So they were like kind of quoting Mel Gibson, but still it was like, I don't want to be a part of this.
Wow.
Why am I a part of this?
Welcome to podcasting.
Yeah. But it was also at a time when nobody fucking listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
And we're back there because now everybody has a podcast. So no one listens to podcasts again in a way.
Yeah.
Everyone has like 3 or 4 of their podcasts and the rest is just a sea of, you get listeners, you get your listeners, but it's almost like we're in oblivion again.
Yeah.
It's almost like we can say whatever we want again.
Because nobody's paying as
too
much attention.
To listen to.
Yeah, it's crazy because I remember when I started listening to podcasts, it was like I said, 2006, 2007. And it was weird because I was in college at FAU and I was taking, I majored in political science. And one of the classes was like political film and fiction. I don't know. It was something where we were talking about like different streams, different mediums to absorb content. And I was like, oh, well, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And everyone was like, the fuck's a podcast?
Exactly.
And I was just like, no, it's so cool. It's like radio, but it's the people you like. So you only listen to them.
It's like radio, but really, really shitty.
But like nobody knew what it was. And it's so weird. You fast forward and like Joe sells to Spotify for like 100 million and Bill Simmons sells the Ringer podcasting to Spotify for like 200 million. And you're like, oh, this turned into something. And
not only that, even if you have a TV show, they still like, so Nikki Glazer, she had the Sirius radio show.
Yeah.
She still does. I've lost track over the pandemic, but she also did a podcast called You Up. Like she would stay in the studio, I think, and do it. Like you have to do a podcast. No matter what you do, you still have to do a podcast too. It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's really bizarre because it's one of those things where listening to you guys back then, and then obvious, like you are, I almost forgot. Plug everything up front. I'm sorry. We got into talking and then.
Oh, real quick. I'll be in Cleveland, Ohio, April 24th. I'm really interested in this conversation though. Keep going.
But we started, like when I started listening to podcasts all those years ago, it was bizarre because you think of something when you hear like you and Tom and Christina and like people that I really look up to and admire as comedians doing this thing. And then like, you fast forward, I started drinking again. Like I can't get my shit together. I stopped doing comedy. But then when I got sober, it's like, oh, I can do this too. And so like to start a podcast, it was bizarre because it's like, now I have something tangible. Now it's not like, hey, do you want to fly to Florida to do a show for $200? Now it's like, hey, if you have an hour and a half, like we can. And so it was crazy because when I was texting with you about doing the show, like I looked at my girlfriend and I was like, this is like, I used to listen, like still do listen to these people and like think like, God, man, I wish I could get to that level of comedy. And it's like, oh yeah, you could just start a podcast.
Yeah. And it is like, I don't know. It's your own thing. And it's a great exercise, I find, because I'm a very scripted comedian.
Yeah.
But I like to see, there's nothing better than like looking at my notes and there's like nothing. And I'm like, all right,
here we go.
Time to kill an hour.
Yeah.
And it just happens. At this point, no problem. I remember as you're bringing up these earlier podcasts, I remember being very nervous just to do the Crab Feast because there was that producer there.
Yeah.
And we didn't know. We had no experience with it. We had tons of experience with stand-up, and we also had tons of experience talking to each other.
Yeah.
But it was new. I remember there was beer there and I had to like drink beer to relax.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Just like I was like, I need a beer. Now I'm like, I better not have a beer before I do the show. I want to concentrate.
Well, and it's weird too, because I treat it, especially when I have local comedians from the Jacksonville scene in here. Sometimes I forget like, oh, this is like anyone can download this. Like it's available everywhere. And so we'll be talking about like an open mic or like I always say there's people who do comedy and then there are comedians. There's a difference.
Yeah. Right.
And so I'll start talking shit about I'm so pretentious. It's the fucking worst.
You named names? Did you name names?
Dude. So I named his name and then I show up to a show like a week later and this guy, he books shows and stuff and he won't even look at me. And I'm like,
yeah,
the fuck's his problem? And then I was like, oh no.
Yeah. No, it's really incriminating.
Yeah.
And we really need to start taking this shit down after a while. because you can get yourself in trouble for shit you said 6 years ago.
Oh yeah, definitely.
At a certain point. I remember one episode I did of the Fullcharge Power Hour, and I pissed off 2 different people who are still fucking pissed at me.
Really?
And it doesn't need to be that way. I wasn't trying to trash those people.
Yeah.
But one thing was not even my fault. The listeners' fault. I don't want to get too, I don't even want to really say what it was because I don't want it to happen again.
Yeah.
But I was talking about someone, and I didn't name a name, but they went and figured out.
Yeah.
They did research and went to trash that person and to make that person feel bad.
Damn.
And then the other person, you can't trust these internet people. They're animals.
They're
you know what I mean? They thought they were doing something to help me.
Yeah, like having your back. Like
they were doing something to hurt me and to hurt some other person, a completely innocent person who did something a little arrogant and a little stupid.
Yeah.
And she got trashed, man. It sucks. And then this other guy is someone I used to work with. Again, I'm being very careful because I don't want to start. It's not a comedian. Yeah. It's not a comedian. So no one has to fucking find somebody I'm in a fight with, for Christ's sake. You don't know who this person is, but it got brought up on one fucking podcast out of the 500 that I've done.
Yeah.
And this person sends me hate mail.
What?
Yeah. And not just about the podcast.
Yeah.
About like
just in general.
How are we going to trash Matt this email?
Jesus, man.
Yeah. It's a lot, dude. The internet has made it so it's not just some bad memory where if I said something stupid at a party, it's this existing, can always be revisited moment that can exist forever as if it's truth.
Yeah.
But it's not truth. It's something I said one time that got recorded.
Yeah.
It's how I felt then.
But then it's taken out of context or clipped up or like it's just always there.
Or if you're that person and you really feeling like you want to make yourself feel miserable that day, you're going to go and listen to it and be like, oh, he did say it about me.
Again. Yep.
Is it true? No, that can't be true. Well, maybe it's true. You know, they're going to go through this whole thing, whereas you didn't even think about it barely at all.
Yeah.
And so it's all, I really feel like I'm going to go and take everything down one day.
Yeah. Just scrub it from the internet.
I think so, because we see how, and I feel funny even talking about it.
Yeah.
We see how people get themselves in trouble for things they did 15 years ago.
Oh yeah.
That were completely unnecessary. They didn't say it. They said it in like a tweet. They weren't getting paid to write that tweet. They weren't getting anything from that tweet. It's all harm in a way when it's taken. Dude, I was watching a movie. I was watching Point Break last night.
The original?
Yeah. And, but you can look at a movie that was 5 years ago and the words they use are now derogatory, like major derogatory words.
Oh yeah.
Like Keanu Reeves, who's the main character.
Johnny Utah.
Yeah. He says like the F word, the other F word.
Yeah.
The offensive F word and the R word. Like I don't even feel comfortable saying what he said. I don't even feel comfortable quoting him. And it's in a movie that's on TV now and they don't really care, but it's become inappropriate.
Yeah. And it's weird because like I still work in the restaurant industry while I'm trying to get everything with like trying to, do this with stand up. And it's bizarre because they're just regular people that I work with. And doing comedy for as long as I have. And then like you said, with podcasting and kind of seeing how the culture has shifted, like people will drop stuff like that all the time at work. And I'm like, whoa.
But that's the thing.
And then they call me the F word. They're like, stop being so sensitive. And I'm like, I have some of the most like dark, offensive humor, but like, I don't say shit like that. Like,
right. Well, see, they think it's okay to talk like that. And since they're being told not to talk like that, it makes them want to talk like that even more, even though I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
But on the other hand, I don't want to tell anybody how to speak either. I think honestly, we're nitpicking right now.
Yeah.
We're going to the symptom instead of the problem.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
But If I wrote that on Twitter, thanks for your opinion, white male.
Yeah.
And I'm not criticizing that way of thinking either. Okay. I get your point.
Yeah, you got a point.
I really do. But I also don't think what I'm saying is crazy. It's so fucked up. And that's what I mean. There's no fluidity to social media.
Yeah, at all.
It's all permanent, and it's
Yep.
all snippets. You're not looking at the person of who I am. You're looking at one thing I said, and it's fucked up. And I do think this could very well be the future of civilization. And I think it's crazy. I think we will get past the cancel thing that's going on.
Yeah.
I think we'll get past it because we'll just get used to the context.
Yep. And well, did you watch the documentary, the Patrice O'Neal documentary?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I want to see that.
Okay. But he has a really good point, and I love Patrice, especially his stand-up and stuff. I think some of it's super funny. And but he had a good point. He goes, and this was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, probably even longer, but his point was just that, if you're straightforward and honest with people about who you are, it's a lot harder to cancel you over something you say than if you try to act one way and then people find out that you said this other thing. Then it's like you lied to us.
You have to be consistent. If you're consistent, you're okay.
Yeah, like Eminem talks about it in his new song. He's like, people try to cancel me all the time. Like, you can't cancel me.
Right. Exactly. And as long as you're upfront about who you are, you already have that support.
Yeah.
It's not like you're trashing the people you were pretending to be friends with. That's when you get in trouble.
Yeah, that's when people start to turn on you. You brought up something interesting about how with podcasting and the internet, it lives forever, but there are certain things that can happen that are just like a memory, that just like a snippet in time that you wish you could forget sometimes. Yeah. I actually have a couple of those with you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, but this is something that sticks out in my head all the time. But you came to Jacksonville to do a show. This was years ago. And you came to Rain Dogs, and I got because obviously I listened to all your different shows, from the Crab Feast to Last Exit to Brooklyn to the Fullcharge Power Hour. So I was so excited, and I was like, hell yeah, the Fullcharge coming to Jacksonville doing Rain Dogs is gonna be fun. So I invited people, and I brought my mom. Yeah. I don't know if you remember this or not, but my mom got hammered.
I think so.
And was like draping all over you. And she's like, my son loves you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Listen, man, you might have been embarrassed, but that was really nice of her.
Yeah.
Because, you go and those tours are tough.
Like the Triple Run kind of shows and all that.
They are tough because you're slumming it when you do those.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you have to put out of your mind that you did this big show in Vegas last month. You have to show up, and you don't know what it's going to be like. It could be like that show in Georgia you were talking about before we started the podcast, where you don't know who's running it. You kind of made this handshake agreement on Facebook with somebody, and you show up. And those shows can be a lot of fun because the establishment isn't there. It's not a comedy chain. If you fuck up in this bar, if you have a bad show, that's it. It lives and dies right there. Yeah. And you can be exceptionally obnoxious, and the expectations are kind of lower in a way. It's like those shows can be really fun, but they can also be just a big argument. So when your mom was drunk and giving me all those like accolades and compliments, I that was like really nice for me.
Okay,
to be honest with you. In fact, I still remember it. I don't remember much other than that about that night. I remember the stage, I remember the show, and I think I drank a little bit too much that night too. Nothing crazy, but I just remember how nice it was that she was so nice to me, to be honest with you.
Well, and it's weird because I have this. So I started comedy in 2009 in South Florida, and I do, I talk about it on stage a little bit, but it's like I did 2 open mics and then I changed all my handles to Brennan T. Comic. Like I'm a comic.
Yeah.
But it was bizarre because then when I moved to, I came to Jacksonville in 2013 to go to rehab. So this is like, 4 years I've been doing shows like on and off. You know how it is when you first start, like, and so, but I was like, oh, okay, I still want to do comedy. And then it was bizarre because I'd go see shows, like obviously that show, or like my ex-fiance and I used to go watch Segura when he was still doing Comedy Zones, like back then.
Yeah.
And I remember I heckled him. There's so much stuff that I've done looking back where I was drinking and I was like, you piece of shit.
Well, let me save you the trouble, and you would have done dumb shit even if you weren't drinking.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't know how to, now you know how to behave.
Yeah, exactly. But back then,
but you didn't know the, what do you call it? The etiquette.
Yeah, exactly.
In a way. And you just liked Tom so much that you were like, dude, I'm your boy. I'm your friend. I'm going to help you right now.
Well, and that's so, but it was with you. So he said, he started like a joke about like, I let a buddy of mine borrow $100 and I went full charge. And he stopped and he looked at me and he goes, what'd you say? And now I'm like sinking in my chair, which is exactly what you're supposed to like call him out.
Right.
And I looked, I was like, nothing, I'm sorry, Mr. Segura, nothing. And he goes, no. What'd you say? And I said, the full charge. And he went, Matt, no. And then he just kept going. But it was bizarre because the reason the point I was going to make was that like, because I had been doing comedy, I thought like, oh, we're all like, and I'd listened to so many podcasts with you and him and Sickler and all these. So it's in my brain, it's like, oh, we're all buddies. Like we're all friends. Like you forget this is a one-sided conversation.
Right. That is a weird element of podcasting and I do a lot of shows with Tom and Christina, and some shows you do for their audience and they're like, why are you doing a monologue? Like they don't even want, forgive me podcasting, but they don't even want this higher art form. I consider it a higher art form.
Yeah, for sure.
Stand-up comedy. They kind of just want some chit chat and they kind of just want to talk to you. Some shows.
Yeah.
Most shows, they're like, all right, we're here for a stand-up show. We're going to see a stand-up show. But every once in a while, me and Tom will do a show. I'll do one of his shows. And then in the green room, he'll be like, that was a show full of people that didn't really want to see a stand-up show. They just wanted to kind of meet us and like have a conversation or watch us have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like a live podcast. Some people don't realize that stand-up is different. And no matter how loose you are, it's still very scripted if you're going to do an hour.
Yeah, definitely. And the other weird thing about it too is that it's very similar to when comedians would get, in the 80s, they'd get the sitcom and then they would do the sitcom, get this big following. And then after they, that was over, they would try to tour again. And all these people show up to see the character that they played. And it's like, no, this is different.
Yeah.
So weird, because podcasting is almost devolving into that.
I think the worst case scenario is, is David Cross. Like he mentioned that in that one special, Make America Great Again, which I really liked, came out before the 2016 election. And he was trashing Donald Trump, and it was taped in Austin, and people were walking out, and he's like, how do people not know what I do? How do people not know what I do? He's like, did you, I think people are here to see Tobias.
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
the Men in Black movies or something.
Yeah, Men in Black, but like Arrested Development, he plays Tobias. Like, who would want to see a comedy show from Tobias from Arrested Development?
The guy who showers in his jeans. Yeah,
that guy isn't very self-aware.
Yeah,
it's strange, but we know it's going to continue to happen. And the thing is, podcasting isn't that different. Your podcast personality isn't that different than your stand-up personality, but your stand-up personality is much more of a competent professional who's going to keep going and do this act.
Yeah.
Maybe break down here or there, but there's a mission up there. There's a job to do.
Yeah, this is what I'm up here to say, and this is what we're going to say. And it's very much not like, hey, we're riffing back. It's like, no, this is not an interactive show. Like
it goes from extremely casual to extremely professional. And there is a difference.
Oh, there's a huge difference. I've noticed.
It's like when you go to see your buddy at work, you're like, who the fuck are you, man?
Yeah. But it's weird. I've told this story before. I had a friend of mine, Trevor Johnson, told a real cringeworthy story about when he met Kyle Kinane, which was funny. But So I know the listeners have heard this before, but probably the biggest mistake that I have made before, like you said, before I realized the etiquette, was thinking that I like was on the same level as like you or Tom or Christina or something. And I'll never forget this, but that same show where I heckled using you,
Yeah.
Afterwards we go out to the meet and greet, and maybe it was the show before, because we saw him every time he came into town.
Yeah.
But the worst thing he could have done was he was so nice to me.
Oh yeah.
Like we were in line and he points at me and he's like, "Hey man, what's up?" Just what's up?
This is Tom.
Yeah. And I was like, "Hey," he's like, "Hey, come here." And I walked over. He's like, "Yeah, from Twitter, right?" Because we had been corresponding back and forth. And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, thanks for coming out, man." Like, so courteous, so nice, which was the worst thing for me. Because in my addict, drunken brain, I was like, "We're best friends now." And I would get hammered, and like, I've done this to you. There's so many people I did this to, but I would get like drunk, and at like 2 a.m, I'd send like DMs like, "Hey man, like so happy you're doing your thing. Like next time you're in town, maybe I can get up and get a 5 minute." It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
That's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world because it is written text.
Yeah.
It's not like you're calling someone's phone or
yeah,
I've had people, oh God, you don't even want to give people ideas, but I'll just tell you, fuck it. I've had people call my parents looking for me.
What?
Yeah. And it's like, that shit's out of line.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't have to look at your, and by the way, comics need that. They don't need the validation necessarily, but they do need fans.
Yeah.
To continue to make money, and you need to make money to tour. And it's really not the worst thing in the world to do. But it is funny to think that, all right, I'm going to be so funny that I'm going to make this comedian laugh, because the comedian's not looking for that from you.
Yeah.
Comedian's looking for the way Tom was talking to you after the show was what he's looking for from you, which is, "Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you." Like, there's no expectation other than like when you're nice to him, that's what he needs.
Yeah.
He wants to feel like everyone enjoyed the show. He doesn't need to like laugh. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong, dude.
No.
I'm just telling you, like, and now the comedian isn't looking for a laugh. The comedian's like,
and it's so weird since getting back into it and doing a lot more shows, like, because since, like, I was telling you before we started recording, but the listeners know the story, since I got sober again and I dove back into comedy, it's like, this is my life now. Like, you and all the people we've been talking about gave me something when I was, struggling real bad, which was laughter, something to laugh at.
Right.
And so that's why it's always been a real big thing for me to always try to support those people who, whether you knew it or not, were there when things were like really, really bad.
Yeah. I get that, man.
Yeah.
I have shows like that in my life. I have entertainers like that in my life.
Yeah. And so it was one of those things where when I got back into stand-up, I was like, well, if I can be that for anybody else, that's my job, is to give back. And I've had people reach out and be like, "Hey man, like, so happy you started the podcast." Like, people I used to work with, obviously it's friends since we just started, but it's like, I just got sober and this is like an inspiration. I was like, well, I never like, that's a little much, but it's a
huge inspiration just to see someone else do something that person might want to do.
Yeah.
Is huge, because half the problem with drinking is you just want to fit in. You don't want to say no sometimes when someone offers you a beer.
Yeah.
And then if you're trying to have a clean slate, that one beer can escalate, or that one beer can just ruin your perfect record that you wanted to build that momentum.
Yeah.
So it is inspirational just to do something that's difficult.
Yeah.
You're doing something that's difficult and people appreciate that.
Well, and it's weird because it's like from that movie Road Trip, they say it all the time, but it's like, if it was easy, it would just be the way, like everyone would do it.
Right.
But and that's the thing, that it's always been fun for me to be in these situations, because now I do so many shows now, and some of them are a little irresponsible, but it's this weird thing in my, like, literally, like, when people talk to me about it, because what stand-up means to me and meant to me, and still to this day means to me, it's like, I want to be able to do that. That's why a lot of my material is not like club friendly, if you know what I mean. Like,
I do know, and I think that's good.
Yeah, it's not like, hey, we're having a good time. It's like, yeah, like I have a giant scar on my forehead from when I got into a fight and I cut my own face open to prove a point. Like,
Right.
anybody else crazy? Like, or
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got scars all over my body from when I used to hurt myself, but I try to make that funny. So people in the audience who may have gone through that or going through that, and same thing with my alcoholism. It's like, oh, it's not like it's bad, but it's gonna be okay. Like,
Yeah, but
look
it's
at this
also
guy.
it's also your unique story, which you have to do no matter what.
Yeah. Well, and
You
that's
know, you
another
ha-
big thing is because I have friends that, and you know this from living in New York. I have a friend of mine who started comedy in New York. And when we were planning on moving last year, April 1st, we were getting ready
Yeah.
to sign our lease and then the world fell apart. But
Fucking best date in the world for
yeah,
you to get the rug pulled from under you.
right.
Yeah.
But I had a friend of mine who started in New York and she said, hey, Brennan, I just want you to know, like she gave me a list of all these open mics and it was super awesome. But she goes, I just want you to know, like a lot of comics, especially comics who are new to New York, talk about being sober, talk about alcoholism. She goes, so you have to be aware of that. That's not going to be unique to you.
Yeah.
She goes, but you do have stories that, like my closing story is me. Like it's a story that happened to me that I try to make fun and funny. So it's like, okay, well, I'm not like, I'm worried about it, but I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah. Both things are good. It's good to be aware, but it's also good to do what you want to do.
Yeah. And so it's, because you have an interesting kind of movement through your career. Because you went to LA when you were young, and that's where you were going to act.
No, I was going to write, actually.
You were going to write.
Yeah, I'm not that crazy.
But then you started doing stand-up, and then you know, because you've toured all over the world. But then you went to New York, but then you came back to LA, but then you went back to New York.
Yeah.
Break that down.
Well, the first time I went to New York, it was during a lull. You know, I just wasn't making enough money to survive there.
Yeah.
But
in LA.
Well, things were slowing down in LA. And I was like, I should try something new. I should switch it up.
Yeah.
I should switch it up. Not that things were terrible. It was just like I had this big moment where I was touring with Daniel Tosh and I did my half-hour special.
Yep.
And then it wasn't clear how my career was going to go because, you know, my career didn't catch on fire. It was like, okay, you did these good things. Great. Good for you. Now you have to figure out kind of another.
That seems like a total mind fuck because it's someone.
It's just like, dude, it's just like
locally. It's like, to get a half-hour special, that's it. I'm made. But it's like, no, that's not how it works.
That's when you realize that 8 million people have a half-hour special.
Yeah.
And
like everyone has a podcast.
Yeah, no, it's like it opens your eyes and it's not your fault because you're led in that direction by your peers, but also by the industry and your manager and all this stuff. It's like you get that half-hour special, Matt, even Tosh, you get that half-hour special, you're good. And I got it. And I didn't even get like a booking agent. Wow. It was just, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not, I don't think people disliked it. I just think it wasn't enough to make enough people excited about me that they could make money off me. And so I was just kind of like, you know, kind of on my own. I was in a better position in a way, but I was also in a worse position in a way because it's like, all right, Matt, it's like I graduated from college or something. It's like, all right, Matt, now you got to get a job. Like
now what?
You're on your own now. And then you're fending for yourself. And I really felt like I made something for myself in LA. And so I was going to go to New York. Every time I went to New York, I really enjoyed it. But it's a different thing to move there because then all of a sudden you're the competition.
Yeah.
Or I don't know how they viewed me, but I didn't feel like I fit in 100%. And I also didn't realize that fitting in with the other comics was so much more or such a big part of your career. I missed that somehow. And it was eye-opening to me. I was like, oh, I got 1 million friends in Los Angeles. I got 3 friends here.
Yeah, because you came up with the LA people and you guys were all doing shows together. So you were all close. Because I remember, I hope this isn't out of line, but I remember you telling a story. And this sticks out in my head because I've been in situations where I'm around these kind of people where you were doing a show in New York. I think this is back the first time you were there. And I think you told it on Last Exit to Brooklyn, but you were doing a show in New York and you showed up because you were booked on the show. And there were New York comedians there who hadn't done anything. It'd be like doing a show with me in Jacksonville, like nothing, no credits. and they looked around like, who's this guy? And you were like, are you like, I'm fucking leaving. Like, are you serious?
I don't remember that. I do remember getting on stage one time and I just started talking and I heard a comic, because the comics stand in a certain place in the room.
Yeah.
The guy goes, oh, this guy. As in, like, they were vaguely aware of me.
Yeah.
And it didn't sound like they liked me.
Wow.
But that's one guy said one thing. I don't fucking know. All I knew was I was surprised that my credits didn't transfer, not my TV credits, in a college sort of aspect. I was surprised that I didn't, and I'm not saying I didn't fit in. I was just surprised that I didn't fit in right away. Yeah. And if I had more money, I definitely would have stayed there, because I definitely liked it and I definitely started getting the hang of it. But there was just so many circumstances that made that such a miserable experience that I kind of just needed to get out.
Okay. So then you went back to LA.
But when I went back to LA, you can never go home again, which is a weird thing for Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is some place that people go after they get in their shit a little up and running, and then they go there. Well, I started there. Yeah. And it's weird, because you've taken time off of comedy. You have to kind of like start all over again. Yep. So in a way, I started all over again in New York, and then I started all over again in LA, believe it or not. There were certain things that still existed. Like now is going to be on Your Mom's House podcast, and Your Mom's House podcast is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And Tosh would still use me on this or that, and I could snag some. There was remnants or leftovers from when I was there before, but it wasn't the same. And I actually started missing New York because New York's just so much cooler.
I love New York.
Perfectly honest.
Yeah. When we got off the plane and got onto the subway from JFK, because I had only ever been there once as a child. Like, and my dad obviously took us around, but I didn't experience New York as an adult. So we went up there 2 years ago to see Last at the Garden. My girlfriend, we had only been dating a few months, but knew how much comedy meant to me. And got me these crazy tickets for a very like New Yorker centric, like this is what New Yorkers do charity event up in New York City for Laughs at the Garden. Because I love Bill, and she knew that. So she booked the flight, booked the whole vacation. And I had always talked about going to LA because I was like, oh, I'm handsome enough. I'll act, that delusional thinking.
And LA is cool as shit. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. But I had been to LA as an adult, and I was just like, yeah, this is where I'll go. Like, this is where, Matt started. This is where Tom started. This is where Sickler started. Like, I'll come out here. Like, I'll be like one of the boys, like that delusional thinking. As soon as we got out of the subway station and someone like honked and was like, fuck you, I was like, no, this is where I want to be. Like,
they're even bigger dicks than Florida.
Dude,
I gotta move here.
But I felt so comfortable because it's one of those things where everyone's around, but nobody's paying attention.
I read this book about I forget the woman's name in Sonic Youth, but she talks about the chaos of New York is actually very calming.
Exactly.
Because your brain is occupied with kind of navigating the city. Yeah. And so this is going on, this is going on, this is going on. And it's better to be in the moment. And there's way more flavor than just the gas pedal and brake of Los Angeles. Los Angeles is amazing, but New York is this matrix experience where you're really in something. Yeah. You're physically in a world, a jungle, and it's so spontaneous and it's so fun and it's really hard. Especially during the pandemic. But like if you want to run an errand in New York, you probably don't have a car to do it with. You wouldn't even, and if you did have a car, that's another set of problems. Yeah. Where you got to like find a place to load that car up, double parked and all that shit. It's there's so much going on. But what I really loved about it was the transportation. And I would go back and visit a lot. And I had the hang of it. I started thinking, it's kind of a shame I bailed because I put in a lot of work here, not just with the comedy scene, but also with just learning how to navigate New York and
living in New York. Yeah.
And I was I was becoming a part of the city, and I got out too early because I was just too tired and too exhausted and too confused and too, quite honestly, mentally. I don't like when other people say it about me, but I'll say it. Like mentally, I wasn't at peace. There was too much going on.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense, because then I know with what you were saying, when we started walking around New York, because I'm naturally an anxious person, like I have a crippling anxiety, but when you're walking around New York, there's so much going on that you almost cannot be in your own head.
And it's good for being a stand-up comic too, because it's like, oh, you got an opinion about all the things that are going on.
Yeah, exactly.
You got a take about all the things that are going on. You're seeing a lot, not on the fucking internet where everybody uses the same terms and everyone's seeing the same exact presentation, the same video, the same photo, you're seeing unique things
live.
And you can then go, I saw this today. This is what I think about it. It's, and you get to see the human experience, and you get to see so many different types of people, not just different types of races, but everyone's got a different job. Everyone's got a different job. And that's another difference. Los Angeles, people have a lot of different jobs, but I don't know the number, a good portion of LA society works in the film business.
Yeah.
And their mind is always on that. And the discussions are always on that. And everything revolves around that. Whereas outside of that, LA, people aren't as obsessed with entertainment. Even though we're all obsessed with entertainment, it's not like a reality. It serves its own purpose. In New York, everyone's doing something different.
Yeah.
And so there's not this collective goal of being a goddamn movie star.
Yeah, because in LA, that's you go to LA because, like you said, because the film industry is there. But in New York, it's the financial capital, it's the fashion capital, it's the cuisine capital.
You name it.
Yeah.
Even if they're not the capital, they got a pretty good fucking scene.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's
like their scene is still bigger. Even if it's not that big, relatively speaking, it's still bigger than anyone else's home scene. Like say knitting or something.
Yeah.
There's more knitters in New York than anywhere else. And
well,
I've only seen like one, but still there's a scene. There's a sewing store right by my apartment. There's a sewing store, like a hip sewing store.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
with
yeah.
Fucking $18 thread and shit.
We had Jake had on a couple weeks
high-end
ago.
sewing.
And he lives in New York and does he just moved to Philly, but he was living in New York for a while. And he said, just when it comes to comedy, there's scenes within the scene.
Yeah. So think about this. I still don't feel like I've spent enough time in New York and that I'm a legitimate part of the comedy scene, but I'm in it like 3 clubs.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like much because there's so many clubs.
Yeah.
But 3 clubs is all I ever had in Los Angeles. I mean, give or take, but still. You see what I'm saying? Even if you get a little piece of that apple,
yeah,
you're not hungry.
Yeah, it's crazy because I fell in love. Like I said, I'd been to LA a couple times and I was like, yeah, I guess this is the move. But when we got to New York, I was like, I loved, like, this place is awesome. So we, and the listeners have heard this, but and I know I told you, we did everything. We went back the next year. We had made a plan. We're going. So we had made the plan because I had done, it's one of those things. And this from bouncing, from going from one scene to the other. When I got back into comedy, it was like, okay, I've kind of dusted off the training wheel. Like, I got the rust off, like I'm ready to go. I'm writing again. Like I had I had 45 minutes that I was comfortable with. I was like, I need to get out of Jacksonville now. Like
New York,
New York is where we're going. And we went up there March 7th. Everyone's wearing masks and gloves and stuff. And it was kind of weird. I know Will made a big thing about it at the Cellar. He came out like full mask, like full gloves. And I was just kind of like, all right, we'll be okay. Like I studied political science and history. I was like, they won't shut down the government. They've never done that before. Like the government won't shut everything down. That's not going to happen. That's what I kept telling my girlfriend. Yeah. And the broker had sent us the paperwork and told us to electronically sign the lease on the paperwork. Yeah. But this is like at this point, this is like March, like 15th.
Yeah.
And now everything's starting to shut down. But
yeah.
the brokers are like, no, just sign
there.
it. Just sign it. Just sign it.
Yeah. Of course.
Fuckers. And then
Of course.
but I had a couple of friends go up to New York and have horrible experiences because they got the apartment sight unseen and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, we will not sign the papers until we're in the living room. Like,
yeah, good for you.
That's when we'll sign the papers. And then 3 days after that, she got a call from where she works, which is a really nice steakhouse on Fifth Avenue. They called her and they're like, your transfer's off. Like, you're not coming.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later, my work called and was like, yeah, your transfer's off. And we were like, no, we're right. We're here. We're right there.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, you guys are so smart to get your jobs transferred there.
Yeah.
So you got that going for you. Hopefully you can get that together again. Are you still thinking about moving there?
Yeah, luckily or unluckily, we live in Florida. So she never stopped working.
Awesome.
So all the money we had saved to move, we still have it. And
good. Oh, good.
Yeah. So it's because neither I was out of work for a month, but I was fortunate enough to get unemployment for that month. And then she never.
So you're
stopped
fine.
working.
You guys are fine then.
Yeah.
That's great news.
Yeah. So we're still planning on moving, but it's interesting what you're saying about it being the capital of everything. Cause like I have family members who are like, a little more right leaning, but they're like, why the fuck? Like, why would you want to go to New York City? It's a cesspool. It's this, it's that. I go, it's the greatest city in the world. Like literally, it's historically the greatest city in the world.
But you got to know that like they have a point too.
Yeah.
So most people who live in New York, especially people that didn't grow up there, are seriously like always contemplating leaving. As part of being a New Yorker is talking about leaving. In fact, every Woody Allen movie has a scene where they go on vacation.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. Leave. They always get in the car and go for a ride in the country. Part of being a New Yorker is leaving New York. The Strokes have a song about it. I swear one time I'm going to leave this town, he says. And they're a very New York band.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of them did leave, at least temporarily. And what I want to tell you is like visiting there and moving there are two different things. So when you move there, you really want to keep your game face on. It's not as romantic all of a sudden.
Yeah.
When you have your logistical problems that you had at home are now in New York City, but now you're a little homesick. You don't have this. It's harder when you first move there.
Yeah.
But just realize that and realize this is an investment, and comedy will probably be tough at first, but you're actually going to get a lot better. And you're probably going to like scrap a lot of jokes because you're going to see so many comics.
Yeah.
Not that you should do what they want you to do, but you're going to get more perspective about like, oh, I need to do this type of material, but the world might also have enough of that. Maybe I should think about this or that. And I think with anything, and keep in mind, when I moved to Los Angeles, it was the same thing. I was 23 and it was much more appropriate. Moved to Los Angeles. I missed my girlfriend who had become my ex-girlfriend. I missed having everything dialed. I missed having everything together. And now as part of someone else's scene. But the difference there was I was so far away from home. There was no way I was going to go back home so easily.
Yeah. You're not just hopping in the car and driving back to Maryland.
No momentum had happened. So moving back to Maryland was like giving up on ever living in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so I stuck it out. And geez, man, within a year or two, things were like happening. Well, not big things, but
that's
things.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's weird because, and this is probably again my delusional thinking, but it's one of those things like when I went to visit, I told my girlfriend, I was like, we can do whatever you want during the day, but at night I'm going to be at the Cellar because again, comedy is like means a lot to me. So I was like, that's where I want to go. And it was bizarre because like you'd be outside and these, like I've told you before, like a lot of these people I look up to, like almost in an idolizing fashion, which I know I shouldn't do, but it's like you'd be sitting outside. I was standing outside smoking a cigarette and Tom Rhodes was outside and I was like, that's Tom Rhodes. Like I've followed Tom. I've known about Tom Rhodes forever. Like since I started watching comedy, one of the original Comedy Central presents. So my girlfriend just walked up. She goes, Tom? He goes, yeah. She goes, this is my boyfriend, Brennan. I was like, what are you doing? But it's like, you're just standing outside. I'm smoking a cigarette, talking, like shooting the shit with Tom Rhodes. I got to smoke a cigarette with Dave Attell because he just was outside the Cellar.
Dude, do you know that every night in New York City is a fucking comedy festival.
That's exactly, yeah. And I was like, if I can
every night, Monday night is a fucking comedy festival.
It was like 2
Every
o'clock
night
in the
New
morning
York.
on a Tuesday, and Godfrey's going up because he always goes up last. And I was just like, this is like, if Godfrey came to Jacksonville, it'd be like a Friday, Saturday, like 8 o'clock primetime thing. It's like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning at the cellar. There's, people have left, like, and he's just doing his thing. And I was like, this is, and it's so weird because stand-up is kind of a niche thing, but to me, because it is my whole world, it's like, this is what I'm talking about. And
yeah, man, that's the very nature of it. It's accessible. It's available.
Accessible. That's the best word for it.
And it just brings two things to mind. The second time I moved to New York, I did it absolutely right.
Okay.
I had patience pre-downloaded into my brain.
Yeah.
And I treated it like I just said, like we're just talking. I treated it like a comedy festival. I'm like, I'm going to go instead of, stage time's important, but I'm going to make it just as important to go hang out and connect with the people that I do know and just take the fucking pressure off.
Yeah.
Do the work without the pressure. And New York has been a great experience the second time around. It really was the first time around. I just had a bad attitude. And so that's really what it takes. Perspective and attitude.
Yeah.
And it is an adjustment, and it's different than just visiting, but don't get scared. Like, it's actually more fulfilling to make the commitment and just do it. Yeah. Be a part of it. It's an amazing thing. And then once you start getting it down and be like, oh, I got to get to this place. Well, I'll need this train. This is like the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
You seem so, it feels so free because you can have a car there, but you're not going to use it in the same way. It's like you're in a video game, man. It's like,
and just,
you can just go wherever, all these different places. And you'll see Adrian Brody on this side of the street and fucking Dave Attell on that side of the street.
Yeah. And you're like,
and you got to pretend like it ain't no big deal.
We stayed at the Soho Grand, and this is, I make this joke, but I'm always like, smoking cigarettes have afforded me a lot of opportunities.
Yes.
We're staying at the Soho Grand. I go outside 7:30 in the morning, go outside to smoke a cigarette. Dave Chappelle walks out of the Soho Grand at 7:30 in the morning. He stops to light his cigarette, and I go, holy shit, you're Dave Chappelle. And he turns and I go, I'm a comic from Florida. I love you. Everybody loves you. And he just went, thanks, man. And walked away. But it's like, okay, could have handled that a little better. But like, that's just what happens. Like you said, this is what happens in New York.
What's funny is like in New York, I think people are at least try to pretend like they're cooler.
Yeah.
So like you didn't see Dave Chappelle get mobbed, did you?
No.
So it's weird because in LA is built on celebrities, but people value celebrities more.
Yeah.
So when Chappelle shows up at the Comedy Store, tons of people are going to try to talk to him. But in New York, at least, people you're going to say hi, but he's not going to be mobbed necessarily. Dave Chappelle's a unique person in that.
Yeah, that's true.
He's super famous.
Yeah.
And so what, you said hello, dude. That's fucking cool.
But it was weird because it was one of those things where I've told this before, but I think you might get a kick out of it. I have a very respected comedian in the Jacksonville scene, Chris Buck. He tours a lot.
I know.
You know Chris. You did the show. But we were talking about it one night. This was last year, right before I moved. We were getting together the going away show for Rain Dogs. We're just having like kind of almost like a heart-to-heart conversation. But he says he like gets real serious and he looks at me and he goes, you'll do fine. And I was, and I was kind of like, I was a little weirded out because that's not Chris's style. And he was like, you'll do fine though. You'll be fine in New York. And I literally I got choked up and I was like, is that because you think I'm funny? Like you think I'm such a good comedian that I'll do fine? And he looked at me, shook his head. He goes, no. He goes, I don't think you're that funny at all. He goes, but you're really good with people. And that's all that matters. Yeah.
And also like you are funny and you've got a lane.
Yeah.
And you're going to find a way for that to make sense. If you hang out long enough, keep an open mind, see the opportunities. I've seen so many people, and this is no comment on you. I've seen so many people that I thought were open micers in Los Angeles, and then you go away for 3 years or you go on the road or whatever, you come back and they're in the Comedy Store, they're crushing it.
Yeah.
On stage, and they're friends with like all my friends now.
You're like,
and it's
happened?
Like, wow, holy shit. And the first time you see it, you're like, what the fuck? You're like, you're even mad at them. How dare you get good?
Yeah.
But after it happens 10 times, you go, almost everybody who hangs out and tries long enough finds out what they're good at.
Yeah.
Gets a job doing whatever. It might not even be directly creative, but they find their way in the world. And what this pandemic has taught me is I'm going to be a comedian, whether I finally realized I love comedy. No joke. Yeah. Like, this is what I do. And I don't care how successful I'm going to be at it anymore. And that is the freedom to be successful, believe it or not. Well, because that's when you're going to be pure and do what's unique to you.
Yep.
And not be result oriented, but be work oriented. And that's when it works. In fact, one of the times where my career really worked out is when I was about to quit. And I go, well, before I quit, I'm going to do exactly what I want to do on stage.
Yeah.
No more trying to figure out what people want. I'm going to do exactly what I want. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like it.
Yep.
And that's when comedians recognize me. And that's when the LA, for lack of a better word, Hollywood people started noticing me.
Yeah. And it's really cool that you say that, because I remember when I first started, I was fresh out of playing college football, and I had all these like dude bro, like frat guy, like just egregious. Like, I went back through an old joke book from 2009 and I was like, this is horrific. Like, not even not shock jock. What's the word? Not even
just like shock value.
Yeah. It wasn't even that. It was just bad. And I actually read it and was disappointed in myself that I had written it, but it was so long ago and I was still drinking and stuff. And it's weird because like it's almost like that same mindset. When I came back, it was like, no, like I know what I want to say now, and that's what I'm gonna do. And so like I could be like, the pandemic happened and I'm in Florida and I'm not pursuing comedy in New York, but it's one of those things where it's like it doesn't matter. Like, I'm still going to do comedy. Like,
this is part of the process.
Yeah.
It's new. The pandemic is new to our generation.
Yeah.
But it's part of the process, dude. There's going to be people that aren't coming back.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that left, and we were on Street Easy, but right before we went up there, and the place we found was in Murray Hill, because we both were like, we're going to live in Manhattan. So the place we found was in Murray Hill, but it was tiny, you know how it is. And we were looking at the same price range a couple months ago when the vaccine started coming out and stuff, same price range. Places with doormen and gyms and top floor lounges, same price range.
Yeah. Here's our big benefit. Me and my fiance's rent didn't go up.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm sure we could get a much better place for the price, but we don't feel like dealing with it.
Yeah. The move and all
but
that.
I also mean people aren't going to come back to comedy.
Yeah.
There's people that are going to be like, you know what? I realized, just like you and I are realizing, no, this is definitely my lane.
Yeah.
Comedy's definitely my lane. There's certain people going, you know what? I don't miss it and I don't want to go back.
Which is so weird to me, because I understand.
Not to me, because I've felt that way before.
Yeah.
I just don't feel that way now.
Yeah. Because in my head, it's just one of those things where with how much it's all meant, it's like you can't, just like I would never, it doesn't matter. Like, once I find someone, and this is the addictive personality in me, but once I find someone that I like it's like, oh, like, I don't understand people who like quit podcasts. It's like, no, I've been here from the beginning. Like, we're like ride or die. Like, let's go.
You also never have to quit a podcast. You can take fucking 3 months off.
Yeah, that's true.
And just keep it up. Like, I haven't quit my second podcast, Roadheads, but I ain't doing any episodes either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No. I don't mean as a creator. I'm talking about as a fan, how people just like, that's what I mean.
I can see that. I can see
like
people.
One of those things where it's like, well, I'm an addict, obviously. And so my whole thing is like, once I find something I like, that's it. Like, I'm with that. Like, if we vaguely know each other, but if you called me up tomorrow and said, hey, Brennan, I need you to get up here, like something, like I'd be like, all right, let's go.
Right.
and that's just how my brain works. So like with comedy, it's like, no, this is my life. Like, this is what
Right.
I'm doing. So it's so bizarre to me when people like, I've had Dan Venti, a very funny San Diego comic, was out there with like Taylor Tomlinson and Brian Simpson and that coming up in that. And then he just one day decided like, no, like I love my girlfriend. Like I want to just be with her and be happy. And I'm like, how does that even like, I can't even fathom that.
There's two sides to that. One is you achieve and experience comedy or anything, but we're talking about comedy, and you go, wow, I accomplished this. I still feel exactly the same. I'm not happier. And now I have to do it again.
Yeah.
And so they fall out of love with comedy.
Okay.
And then I forget the other side of it. The other side of that is, you know, some people, oh, I know what I'm trying to say. Some people get scared. Like some people are like, I can't do this anymore. They're scared for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they ignore their calling. Either way, it's valid. If you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. But sometimes we don't do stuff because it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm against.
Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense. It's like, if I quit comedy, it would be because I thought it was very hard. It wouldn't be because I didn't want to do it. I want to do it. In fact, what I've realized is that's what I do. Like all day long, my brain comes up with jokes.
Yeah.
That's all it fucking does.
Yep.
That's all. That's a one trick pony. And even though I've made it work in the past, it's actually really easy to quit because it's not an ideal life. But what I'm realizing is, oh shit, it is the ideal life. You know, it is the ideal life for me, and I'm okay with it. And sometimes when I start thinking about how like my parents see me or how the world sees me, I start going, oh, this isn't right. This isn't right. I shouldn't be living like this. But the truth is, like this pandemic has just shown me, no, I was right. Yeah. I worked hard to get there, and that was the life I wanted. Yeah. It wasn't easy. That's the hard part. You go, well, it wasn't easy. Well, guess what? Everything's fucking difficult.
Yeah.
In this society.
Worth having is,
things that aren't worth having are fucking difficult.
That is
just
true.
Maintaining a studio apartment and working a regular job you don't like. That's difficult.
Yeah. And that's a weird thing.
Everything's difficult.
I get it from some of my family, like my twin sister and stuff. It's very much like, okay, well, and this is something I kind of had to sit down with them and explain, because it was, you know, well, you're going to get, because I was engaged once before and then it didn't work out because I couldn't stop drinking. And so you fast forward and now I've been with my girlfriend for a few years and they're like, oh, are you going to get married and have kids and like, you know, buy a house and all that. And I'm like, no, like that's not.
It's really weird that's, I get why people wanted that for their family.
Yeah.
But I just know so many people that have those things and they're not happy.
Yep.
And a lot of times people will, in the same conversation, tell you how unhappy they are. And then tell you, well, you got to be just like me.
Yeah.
Like I see it with religion. I see it with material possessions. I am so lucky. I don't give a fuck about material possessions. I do care about money. I like the freedom of having money. And I like the stability of having money, but I could give a fuck about what it can get me other than survival. Yeah. And so I'm lucky that way. And there's no way I could have made it this far if I wasn't that way, because it's always going to take a little bit longer than if you play it straight. Unfortunately, I've found I've played it straight simultaneously. Like I kept an office job for a long time.
Yeah.
And that didn't make me a whole lot of money. And that didn't make me very happy either. And I got in relationships when I was younger, and that made me less happy than being single. All these things you're supposed to have just to have.
Yeah.
I don't look at life that way. I look at things on a case-by-case basis. Now I found my fiance. She's great. Yes, I commit. But just getting married to anybody?
Just getting married
no
to
way.
Get married? Yeah.
No way.
Not, yeah. Well, and it's really cool because it's one of those things where, as morbid as it sounds, but it's just that, like you're talking about, like your brain is just, my brain kind of works the same way when it's like I went from South Florida I moved back home after college, and I had like a duffel bag. Like I threw everything away. Like I don't care. Like I wanted to keep my jersey from the bowl game I played in. And I was like, other than that, I don't care. And then I went, same thing. I went from, there to Oklahoma City, where I lived for a little while with my cousin, and we were doing comedy out there. And shout out to you. I wore a suit to every fucking open mic.
You got to start early. If it's going to be a thing, you got to start early.
So I would wear a suit to every open mic, just like from the special, your half hour. And then, but it's the same thing. Like I moved up there with literally a bag, and it's like, I don't so it's really cool because to hear you say that, cause it's one of those things where it's like, I'm fine with being, I said this to my sister, I'm fine with being extensively poor for the rest of my life. If I get on stage and like show people that everything's going to be okay. Like that's a
big moment. And you'll be surprised to learn that I finally got to that point too over the past year.
Yeah.
Cause I always had a little bit of maybe I should be doing something else, because I did find myself unhappy sometimes.
Yeah.
But the truth is that's my battle. That's my thing. That's the fight I want to fight. Yeah. That's the specific fight I want to fight. And so I'm like 100% cool with it. And I'm very excited now because I'm just focused on what's in front of me. And right now, just doing stand-up at all is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I can speak from being off for 3 months and then coming back just at some of the shows that I've done. It was, other than that Georgia show, most of the time people are excited to be out, but they're intent on listening. Now you have to, the one thing that's been frustrating for me is dealing with a lot of the COVID material. Cause it's like everyone's doing it, and it's not just that, but it's like, I'm not around the cream of the crop when it comes to comedy. So it's like, it's the same jokes over and over and over. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, didn't you listen?
I got bad news. New York, you can just multiply that by 500.
Yeah, that's true.
You think you're going to go somewhere and everybody's going to be great. Truth is, the bar is way higher there, even with the open micers.
Yeah.
But you're still dealing with people who are writing every week.
Yeah. And
there's going to be you're going to have to watch a lot of mediocre shit, even from great comics.
Yeah.
Like, because they're working shit out, and you're going to be where they're working shit out.
There's so many times that I'll do a show and it's like an open mic, and I'm like, all right, I've got 3 new stories that I kind of want to work on. And then it fills up and I'm like, fuck. Like I can't, like I have to, because especially in Jacksonville, like there are certain people that I don't think I'm very good, but there's certain people who kind of look up to me and a few of the other comics. So then if a bunch of people show up, it's like, oh, now I can't work on material. Like now I have to bring it. So it's like, right. But it's like, you're saying, like sometimes in New York, you'll see comics that are really good, but they're like, no, I'm working shit out. Like, sorry.
Yeah. And if you're at a working shit out night, your audience is going to be the comedians.
Yeah.
And they will smell that gotta kill it material on you. If you start doing some A-list shit, they'll be like,
that they know.
Not that they know, just that like they can tell. A comedian can tell if something's a bit, sure, or if you're working something out, and they want you to be in the gym with them. Yeah. They will judge you. They'll be like, dude, you doing your fucking closer?
Yeah. There are so many times where I've done open mics in other cities and gotten nervous and like switched gears into like, oh, I'm gonna hit them with my best material, like my fucking last comic standing set. Here we go.
Yeah.
And they just are like, you fucking really trying to do your 25, right? You're trying to do your feature set right now.
Right.
And I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah, no, and you get that like road. You feel like some kind of road hack, car salesman. Fucking, and I'm older now too, so it's like, you just feel like a moron, because that's where you're allowed to be pure. Actually, you're not going to get laughs either way, so you might as well do what you want to do. And then I've had sad moments too where I go, fuck, I don't know what I want to do right now. I can do anything I want on stage right now, and I can't think of a goddamn thing, which is ridiculous, because if I have a conversation with somebody, I can talk. But you go out there and it's like, okay, I can say anything I want to, but it's just me. What do I want to tell people?
Yeah. What do I want to talk about?
It's a moment of truth. Don't you dare fucking say that out loud. But it's a moment of truth, like, okay, what do I want to express? Sometimes I'm not really feeling much other than, especially when I'm happy. I'm like,
you're like, oh, we're good.
And I don't think you need to be unhappy to be a good comedian. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, as far as God, I strive to have a clear mind.
Yeah.
And when I get it, I don't always want to muddy it up.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's weird because just so much of my material comes from such a dark place that it's weird, because it's like, oh, like if I, like you said, like when I'm having a good week and then I go to Mike's, because it's work, like, you know, you got to work it out.
Yeah.
So I'll go to Mike's and then I'm just kind of like, I don't really, like, I'm good, guys. Like, I don't really know what I want to talk about.
I think, and I really don't want to put the message out that you have to be some kind of miserable person to make art, to make comedy. Because I think the performance wise, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be better when you're in a good mood. Yeah,
definitely.
Performance wise, writing wise, it's like 50-50. You can definitely write when you're in a good mood.
Yeah.
Sometimes you be in such a bad mood, you can just, there's no humor in anything you write.
I have some of those.
Some of those. I've got like fucking encyclopedias full of that. And it's just like, because you have to play the odds, right? So you have to write 5 pages to get 1 or 2 good jokes. So you know that.
Yeah.
So but writing. You're not really writing jokes. You're just writing
a manifesto.
Ideas. And if you're feeling like shit, sometimes you can't see the levity in it or the insight or the cleverness or anything, because sometimes it's just not there.
Yeah, that's totally true. Did you when you first started, I kind of wanted to bring this up, when you first started traveling and like doing, because you went from LA and then you started when you started touring, was that from LA?
I did 2 years of open mics in LA.
Okay.
And bringer shows too. And I thought bringer shows were real shows, like, because that's like those best shows I ever done. And if you don't know what a bringer show is out there, it's when every comedian that's booked has to bring 5, 6, whatever amount of people. And so the audience is really just there to see their one friend.
Yep.
And so, but you have a chance though. You have a chance to win everybody over. And so that's why I thought it was a real show. I could usually figure out, not always.
Yeah.
And then I took a tape from a bringer show and sent it out. And, I wasn't ready for the road. I still don't know if I'm ready for the road. The road is so tough. Not every show. A lot of shows are easy on the road.
Yeah.
Easy, like fucking easy. And then some are just so difficult. And it's not that they're difficult. It's just that you're up there for so long, right? It's not any more difficult than the open mic. And the open mic is like really rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's hard is you're doing 20, 30, 45, and you just, on a bad night, it's the amount of time you have to do.
Yeah.
That's what I had to get used to, because in LA, as in local scenes, if you don't feel like doing your full 10 minutes and you only do 8, nobody gives a shit. They're happy.
Nobody's going to say anything. Yeah. They're stoked. They're like, oh, he didn't have anything else. All right, cool.
But at a club, you're not even really hired to be funny. You're hired to do that amount of time.
Yep.
And so you've got to do that amount of time. And that's what's difficult about that at first. Also, it has moments that meet your fantasies, but it's not the fucking highlight reel that you thought it was going to be. No one's carrying you out on their shoulders at the end of the night. It's just,
it's so bizarre. Cause with social media, we'll post pictures from shows and people are like, man, people are like,
even other comics hooking each other up. Jeff is killing it right now. Cut to reality. There's like 5 people talking. He's killing it.
That's the best part, is I'll look at some of these posts and I'm like, I was at that show. Like, that was terrible.
No. That's social media for you, though.
Yeah, it's all a highlight reel. It's all like, like I ran into some Orlando comedians at a show last night, and they're like, man, you guys are, because we do this little dumb trio called the Clam Jam, and they're like, you guys are blowing up. Like, we see all your flyers. You guys are doing all these shows. I'm like, Marcus, the headliner's the one that makes the flyer. Like, yeah, like, I could post 1,000 of them if I wanted to.
Right. It's a flyer.
Yeah. Like, what?
That's cool though. You see what he's saying though.
Yeah, but it's fun because it's like when I think
it's funny when someone believes your hype.
Yeah,
that's really fucking funny. Like, my parents even think I'm a certain type of person based on my act.
Yeah,
they think I've in the past concentrated on negative aspects of myself, and they start to believe that I'm some degenerate or can't handle my life.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of like joking it and doing a character, and I'm kind of getting away from that. But it's weird how much even people that know you will buy into your own promotion. And I think that's a big revelation for all of us, whether you're a comedian or not. Like people, if you tell people what you are, they'll take your word for it.
Oh yeah. They just, yeah. And I know that because when I was really bad drinking and doing drugs and I wasn't doing any shows for 3 years, I still told people I was a comedian. Yeah. And like, I would still post stuff about comedy and people were like, yeah, Brennan's been doing comedy for 11 years. It's like, well, kind of, but kind of not.
They don't have time to do the research and their brain doesn't want to figure you out. Oh, that's what you are. Fine. Why would he lie about that?
Yeah. Why yeah, exactly.
Like, for me, they were like, why would he lie about like not being able to pay his gas bill and fucking drinking too much?
Yeah.
Why would he lie about that? I'll believe that out. I believe him.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's people, I say this a lot at work just because, you know, as a server, like my goal is to like kind of lead you through what we're doing. So I'd say this, and it's the same thing in comedy. It's like people, it's the same thing in anything really. It's just that if you lead people, most people will just follow, like they'll just believe what you're saying. They'll just be like, okay. I had a law professor once say, if you say, now it's different with the internet, but he goes, if you say anything with confidence, people will believe you.
It's not different with the internet.
You don't think so?
No, there's easily disprovable facts being spewed all the time. And as long as people consistently say the lie, then it becomes a reality for a certain group of people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it like that.
So it's even crazier in a way.
Yeah, because you have access to stuff right there and you're not even going to look it up.
All you're going to find on the internet is opposition to what you believe, but you're also going to find confirmation of what you believe.
Yeah.
So if you want to believe something, you just concentrate on, because no matter what you believe, even if I know I'm 100% right about something, like this desk is solid, I can find something online that says desks aren't really solid. They're this, that, and that.
Yeah.
So there will always be opposition, but I have to go by the article that I already believe in.
There's always people out there trying to like either agree or disagree. What I found, be it with comedy or be it with the restaurant business, and I don't know if this is the same for you, people only ask me a question because their intention is for me to agree with them.
Yeah. Tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. And so it's
weird. Like when you want advice from somebody, like let's say moving to New York, you're going to ask around until someone goes, dude, you should definitely move to New York. You're goddamn right. I should. Because you already knew you wanted to do it.
Yeah, it's we do that. We talk about it in AA a lot. There's guys that know it's a bad decision, so they'll ask their sponsor, and their sponsor's like, "No, this is a bad decision." But then they'll go around and ask like other people with time till someone validates.
Other people like, that drink, other people that don't share any of the same philosophies.
Doesn't matter.
As your sponsor
to agree with you.
Someone that doesn't believe in alcoholism will be like, no, you can go to that bar. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. And they're like, see, told you guys.
Yeah. See, you only had 5 drinks. You're fine. You know, so in their mind, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know, you're not fine. Your sponsor knows you're not fine.
But it's so crazy how people just kind of twist all that. I wanted to ask you before we're wrapping up, but before we get out of here, I know I've listened to a bunch of your shows with Kevin Shea and with Joe and everybody. Is there any kind of story that sticks out in your head of like, I know we talk about like doing well on stage a lot, but like just not like when people ask you about like bombing or anything, is there anything in particular that sticks out in your head? I always like to get this perspective from people, especially people who've been doing comedy as long as you have. And because you were on a private jet one week, and then I know you talked about this, then you were taking a Greyhound the next week to go to a gig.
Actually it's a different order.
Okay. Right? Greyhound one week. The Greyhound
and then because if I got the private jet gig money, I would buy a plane ticket.
That's true. Okay. But have you ever been in
the same month?
Yeah. Where you just were like kind of looking at comedy, and it was just one of those things where it was just kind of like, I don't know, like a bomb story or like getting like really too fucked up after a show or anything like that. Cause I know you talked about it with Kevin doing some of the Tribble runs where you would just like wake up the next day and you're like, we got to drive now.
Yeah, no, that's an exhaustion. That's a fatigue, but that's low stakes. So if you bomb at a Tribble run, a one nighter, like if I bombed in Jacksonville, if I remember I did fairly well that night, but I bombed. So your mom doesn't hang on me. I move on. I move on.
Yeah.
But when it really hurts, I was just talking about this with my therapist. I just started going to therapy and it's already been incredibly helpful. Really hurts. And I don't even know if I want to get into too many specifics, but
no, yeah, don't, if you don't want to.
When it's important.
Yeah.
Like, so well, I'll just tell you, I remember because I found a positive spin on this. I remember I showcased for the David Letterman show in 2007.
Okay.
And I had just been on a bunch of TV shows in a year, and I figured I needed a different set than what I had already done on TV. I thought we were pretty much like, I was that cocky to be like, well, here's the set I'm going to do on Letterman, even though it's not worked out yet.
Yeah.
I was getting that kind of confidence.
As a comic, I understand like that.
Right.
How terrible of an idea that could be.
I did an even worse thing. If I had a new, fresh idea, that at least if I had some passion behind it, I could sell that 5 minutes. But what I did, this horrible idea, is I just took all the bits I hadn't done on TV yet.
Oh no.
And tried to find a way to string them together. And if that wasn't bad enough,
I don't mean to laugh, but I've done that before.
Once it stops, once you realize you're not going to have a good set, panic set in, and I couldn't really move my body.
Oh,
I had no control, dry mouth, the whole thing. Completely traumatic. It bothered me for years. It actually bothered me right up until today because I was talking to this therapist and we're talking about these worst case scenarios, like almost like death. It's like, and that's what you're worried about when you get on, if you get nervous before you get on stage, you're kind of like, oh, that worst case scenario is going to happen again, somewhere in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
But what I realized was, as horrible as that was and as bad as I reacted to it, half of it was just how bad I reacted to it. That year, I started opening for Daniel Tosh and started working colleges. And that was one of the best chunks of my career for like 3 or 4 years straight.
Yeah.
Was just like maybe the best moment of my career. And it happened right after that. And so in my mind, it was always like, oh, I fucked up so bad that fucked up my career. But the truth is, one of the sweetest spots in my career came right after that because it's unrelated, because it's just one night.
Yeah, it's just
one fucking night. And that booker from the Letterman show, I see him around. We're still cool. And guess what? There's no Letterman show.
Yeah, doesn't even
There's
exist
no fucking,
anymore.
he doesn't have that job anymore.
Yeah, nobody even watches late night anymore.
So if we have to accept that the good things won't last, we also have to accept that the bad things won't last.
Yeah.
And so that is not the problem I see it is. It's not the scar. I think it was nobody's fucking thinking about it except for me. And if they are, they're not thinking about just that one night. They're just not. When they think of me, they're not thinking of that one night.
That's true.
It might be part of it, but it's not the overall picture. But I have a tendency to be like, well, now I'm just doing a therapy session with you. I'm sorry. But
no,
yeah,
good.
that is probably one of the worst nights. Also, I did a TV appearance where I just did not like my performance at all. And that's tough too, because you can think of it as like, it's your big moment.
Yeah.
But everyone's got a story like that.
Well, and I have it to a lesser extent. And I know I texted you about this when it happened, but middle of the pandemic, I take 2 different planes to get up to Dayton, Ohio to do a show for my mom's pizza place that she owns. Like, we're going to do a comedy show. I remember getting up there and it's like my whole family's there. And I was just like, oh, I'm going to, like, I've been back into comedy. Like, I'm comfortable in comedy now. Like, I'm going to destroy this room.
Right.
And I bombed for 30 minutes in front of my entire family. And because I was so in my head about like, I have to do well. I have to do well. Yeah. And just bombed. And I was like, it's the middle of a pandemic. I flew 2 planes to get here, 2 planes to get home, took off of work, like did all these things. And it was like, and I think about it constantly, but nobody else cares. Like in my mom's head, she was like, that was one of the best nights ever. We sold the most food and I laughed because you had a couple of jokes about me and that was it. And in my head,
they also don't have the spectrum of laughter and what a comedy show is supposed to sound like.
Yeah, that's true.
So they don't know they gets blown out of proportion when they see comedy on TV. They're like, all comedy is fucking crazy and energetic. And
Yeah.
the audience goes crazy, but they also haven't seen as many shows as you have. And they don't know that you don't like the show, and they don't know that the audience isn't great.
Yeah.
Here's something I find so interesting. And my guard's up on family and friends coming to see me.
Yeah, I know you talked about that.
Because I've had so many experiences like that. They always say, don't worry, we'll laugh. But they fucking flip out when no one's laughing. They're like, oh, they get tighter than you.
Yep.
And they're not laughing.
Never.
They're more tense than you. You might even be okay with it.
Yeah.
But they're like clenching their purses, like fucking tight. They're like trying to control it with their mind. Please let this go well. And that's really is the audience can't be thinking that way, and the comedian can't be thinking that way. You gotta just like channel that energy and be like an open vessel. It's not even you in a way. It's like the preparation is you, and then the moment is just stop thinking.
Yeah, it's just the moment.
Just let everything happen.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. It's very hard to do.
Yeah. Well, we brought a full circle, as
yes.
EA Dubs likes to say.
Yes, I even made one of these in the video.
Oh man. Well, I really appreciate you doing it. Plug everything again.
Yeah. Well, check out my podcast, the Fullcharge Power Hour. It's on iTunes. And
that's an old school.
And I am going to be in Cleveland, Ohio on April 24th, the 10:30 show. I'm so excited. I love this club. I love Cleveland. No bullshit.
Beautiful.
I don't know if you've ever been to Cleveland. It's
my
like
whole family's from Ohio, so I've been
It's like the butt of all these jokes, but it's fucking cool.
It's actually awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really it right now.
Well, again, man, I can't thank you enough. Thank you everyone for listening. I almost said the Full Charge Power. Thank you everyone for listening.
Give it to me. I'll put it out.
To Brennan Tazif is your ex-drinking buddy. Follow me on all social media at Brennan T Comedy. Subscribe, rate, and review. Check out the Patreon page if you want to get the shows early and for the bonus episode every month. And we'll talk to you all next week. Beautiful. We're out.
Okay, so